Alright, so I'm going to teach you how to add statistics to your Kongregate game. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do is download the provided Kongregate shell that Kongregate documentation gives you. I'm going to give this link in the description, but essentially all you're going to need to do is go to this web page, right click on this link right here, save link as, and you can save it whenever you want. Just make sure you know where that location is because we're going to be using it. Now, next, your Kongregate game needs to have a statistic in order to submit a statistic. So on your game, you're going to need to go into edit mode and create a statistic. So go to the second page. And currently I already have a statistic. It's a simple one just called bugs killed. You can check these boxes however you want. You can read the Kongregate documentation to see what all these boxes mean. But essentially, if you want to display in the leaderboard, just check this box here, and these are just the types. That's really all you need to know about it. Just make sure you keep track of exactly what the statistic name is called, because we're going to be using that value in our script. So save that. Now, the next thing we're going to need to do is actually code in the function to submit the statistic. Now, I'm using C#, so I have a function right here that it's a very simple function. It takes in two parameters, a string and an int, and it uses those values right here. Statistic name and statistic value, and I'm calling that function right here with those two parameters put in. So you're going to do an application.external call. Now this function is obsolete, which means it's no longer supported by C#, but it does still work. So right now that's the only way I know how to do it. So in quotes inside of this function, put parent.congregate.stats.submit your statistic name and the value of that statistic. It does need to be an integer. Now you can see right here I have the bugs killed. The string is exactly how the Kongregate statistic looks. So you need to make sure those are identical. This 23 is just an arbitrary value, so that way you can see the stat go through. Now, once you've made this script, and of course you do need to first initialize your API. If you haven't initialized your API, then you need to do that first. Once you've created this script, I'm in Unity. So go ahead and build your game. Make sure you build it to WebGL. Since Google Chrome does not support Unity, you have to make sure you do a WebGL. Go ahead and build the game. It'll probably take a few minutes. Save it to wherever you want. And then let's open up the folder where it's saved. Now, three things most likely will be saved in your folder. Index.html, build, and also template data. If you don't have a template or template data, don't worry about it. This just stores things like your icons, font data, stuff like that. So if you don't have it, you don't need to worry about it. Now, those are the 2 or 3 things that this build will generate for you. This Kongregate shell is what you just downloaded from the website. So you're going to need to drag and drop Kongregate shell into this folder where you built your game. Because we're going to be using this, and we're going to have to edit this HTML in a second. Now, what we're going to need to do is drag in the index.html inside of your build folder. And if you have a template data or a template, also drag that in. Again, if you don't have it, you don't need to worry about it. Now, we're going to need to edit this HTML. So you can open it with whatever program you want. You can do Visual Studio, MonoDevelop, but if you don't have those, I'm just going to do a simple Notepad, because everyone has Notepad. So this is an ugly wall of text. I hate looking at this, but we can edit this file since it is just a simple Notepad file. So we're going to edit a few values. The first thing we're going to do is, if you find this HTTP right here, this script, we're going to need to add an S to the HTTP. That's all you have to do to that part right there. Just add an S to the HTTP. Now, if you come down here and if you find this where it says Kongregate API.embed frame, and it calls this function. Right here you see it says game.html. We're going to need to change this to say capital B build, if I could spell, slash index. And it'll be lowercase index.html. So instead of game.html, it'll say build slash index.html. Now the last thing you're going to do is right here you have your width and height. You're going to change these to whatever the width and height of your game is. Mine happens to be 960 by 600. If you're building with Unity and you're using the default canvas values, you can view those by going to build settings, going to your player settings, into your WebGL tab, resolution and presentation, and those values will be right there. So make sure you're using the resolution that your game uses. So that's what we're going to change in the Kongregate shell. So make sure you save this file and close out of here. Now go back into our build folder where we put this index.html. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one. You can open it with whatever program you want. I'm going to open it with Notepad. So we're going to have to add a few things in here, change a few things. Now the first thing right here, this script is a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to read. You see we have build.unityloader. Instead of this, just take off the build slash. So that way it just says unityloader.js. Now next thing you want to do, you're going to do the same thing over here where it says build slash the name of your game. This will change for whatever the name of your game is. Just take off the build slash. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to have to add some script into here. So right under your head, go ahead and add forward spaces so it's lined up. Type in script space src equals apostrophe congregate.congregate underscore API.js apostrophe slash script. So let me make sure I type that correctly. Alright, so now that we have that in there, you can go and save this notepad file, or again, whatever program you're using. Go back into your folder. So now all we should have in the folder where you built is your Kongregate shell and your build folder. Next thing we're going to do, go ahead and zip up the build folder. Wait for that to load. Now we can go ahead and continue the process of updating your game, or if you haven't actually submitted your game to Kongregate, you can do that now. Again, just make sure that you add in your statistic. Now your game file, as you can see, is going to be your Kongregate shell. Make sure, if you haven't already, to adjust your width and height. That's going to be the same thing that we changed in the Kongregate shell file to the width and height of your game. That's going to change the resolution, obviously. Now in additional files, add in the zip build folder. Now I'm going to go down here and make sure you check all these bottom 4 boxes, so that way it'll let you upload your game. It's going to pull you to this page. Depending on how big your game is, it'll take a different amount of time. Now the Kongregate documentation does provide a really cool little function that will allow you to view debugging systems. So when you go back to your game, if you just add into the end of your game this little code right here, starting with the question mark, it will allow you to view things in your inspector. So if you open up your inspector, you can do that different ways depending on what you're using. You can view your console log if you open your console, and we can see if this statistic is actually submitting, so we have confirmation that this system works. So once the game loads, it'll happen after this Unity loading screen. And unfortunately, Kongregate is a little bit slow about loading games, but you can do various things to decrease your package size, and the Kongregate documentation is helpful with that. Alright, so now once your game loads up, you'll see a few things happen. If you go back in your console, if I can find it right here, it says stat services.submit bugs killed 23. So this is confirmation that the statistic did submit properly. It is in the system. Now if you look right here, the statistic increased. It's 40 because I've already submitted this stat a few times through other testings. If I refresh it, it might be different. But essentially, the stat did appear. See, now it's 63 because it's 23 higher, obviously. So that proves that it does work. If for some reason your high score tabs is not appearing, it's most likely because you do not have your statistic marked to show in the high scores tab. But that's just a simple checkbox when you're making the statistic. That's really easy to fix. But other than that, that is how you submit statistics on Kongregate.